a couple $100 million mistake. So, yeah.
That's a big number.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, if I had just sucked it up either of those three times, well, first of all, I would not be on your podcast.
I don't blame you.
Well, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of The Art of the Fail. Not to be confused with The Art of the Start. You'll find out in a little bit. Right now, I might have given that away to some people who follow along with this next guest very closely. I'm not even lying to you. I've actually got goosebumps right now. I can't believe that we have him on the show. Wow, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm usually pretty good at these introductions, so I'm sorry right now if I'm screwing this up. I promise you I never do, but this next guest of ours needs no introduction. Arguably one of the most well-known names in Silicon Valley, the startup world, ecosystem, whatever you want to call it. You might know him as an author of about 15 books, speaker, venture capitalist, evangelist of Canva. We just know him as being a great guy. Guy Kawasaki, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So like I was saying, we like to do a little bit of a Q&A so that we can get to know the real guy a little bit more. So let's get started. We know what you had for lunch because you just told us that right before we started recording. What'd you have for breakfast today, Guy?
Today, for breakfast, I had a cup of coffee and oat scone something. I don't know.
It was a long time ago. That's okay. iPhone or Android? This might be a controversial answer or question depending on how you answer it.
That's a simple question. Because, well, two reasons. One is my family and wife in particular wants to know where I am many times.
Right.
And the second, because you really can't use an Apple Watch without having an iPhone. The reason why Apple Watch, and really 90% of why I use an Apple Watch, is because there's a particularly good surf tracking Apple Watch app that's not available on Android.
Yep.
Now, having said that, I also have an Android. I have a Pixel 3. And, I tried to give it up, but I think the Android interface and the Android OS has so many advantages over iOS.
Chris would agree.
Yes.
My Pixel, so I have a Pixel and an iPhone.
Yeah, I have a Pixel. I'm a big Pixel fan, and I love the camera, and the OS is really great.
And I just made the switch back to using an iPhone, so it's kind of like relearning a couple things with the interface again. But I like it. I enjoy it. I mean, I kind of missed my iPhone when I didn't have it, so I was sort of like looking for an excuse to get back to using an iPhone. I mean, breaking and smashing your phone accidentally is not the right type of excuse that I would recommend to anyone. It ended up costing me about like $800 anyway, so a very expensive excuse. But I'm back on iPhone. I want to know, what gets you, Guy Kawasaki, up in the morning and keeps you motivated? What is it?
I have two really big tuitions to pay still.
Yeah. That's a good one. Marketing can mean so many different things for so many different people. Just the definition alone of what marketing is. What does marketing mean to you? If you could sum it up in a couple words in a sentence.
Yeah, so marketing means communicating the unique value of my product or service.
Simple. I like it. Easy does it. Guy, what is your favorite book of all time? You are allowed to say one of your own.
No. Favorite book of all time is If You Want to Write by Brenda Ullin.
Cool. Awesome. I guess before we kind of get into it, what does failing mean to you, and do you believe that failure is inevitable?
Well, failure of everything is not inevitable, obviously, but to fail is inevitable. No one bats 1,000. Failure to me means basically running out of money.
Yeah, that's a big failure. Yeah, we've talked about that on the show as well. Cool. So speaking about failure, let's get right to it. Let's start talking about those failures and kind of break them down, and then we can kind of take little nuggets from there. So Chris, why don't you take it?
Yeah, for sure. So Guy, for the 3 people out there that don't know you, can you just give us a bit of a background on who Guy Kawasaki is and how you came to be?
Okay, so I just got a poor connection little warning. Is it still okay for you?
It's good.
Yeah, it's still good for us. Yep.
Okay, so basically I worked for Apple in the previous century. I was Apple's software evangelist and then evangelist. My job was to convince people to write Mac software. Then I started some companies. I became a writer and a speaker. I spent a year working for the Motorola division of Google. And now I am the chief evangelist of a company called Canva, which is an online graphics design service.
Yep.
I'm a Mercedes-Benz brand ambassador.
Cool.
And finally, I am a executive fellow at the Haas School of Business of UC Berkeley.
Nice. So,
awesome.
Guy, I got to interject there. I actually stumbled across Canva probably about 2 years ago from you, something you might have posted on some sort of social network. I have been hooked ever since. I use Canva probably I might use it every day, actually, just for little things that I'm designing as a non-technical designer. It's a really good tool in my toolbox. So just wanted to say that.
Case.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. So that's a good segue, actually, Guy. What does evangelism mean to you, and why have you sort of, gravitated to those positions and, in a way, sort of pioneered those in the tech space?
Yeah. Basically, evangelism comes from Greek terminology, meaning bringing the good news. So what an evangelist does is bring the good news. What a salesman does is make commission.
Yeah.
So I brought the good news of Macintosh. I am currently bringing the news of Canva. So this means that it's not only good for you, but it's also good for the other person. So when I tell you to use Canva, don't get me wrong, it's good for me, but I also believe it is good for you to help you create graphics that help you become a better communicator.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So let's take it back to the previous century, as you mentioned, and you did do work really closely with Steve Jobs, and I was curious, what did failure look like in front of Steve Jobs?
Well, it was a humiliating, soul-crushing, intimidating experience because he had very low tolerance for BS and incompetence. And he also, let's just say, subtlety wasn't his strong point. So he would just rip. And he would rip you in public. So I learned a very valuable lesson that everybody says be positive, communicate, focus on the good stuff. Steve Jobs did none of that. So he ruled by fear, and I have to tell you that fear works.
Yep.
So that's actually a follow-up question I had. Can you unpack that a little bit? If you had to, narrow it down, what did you learn about failure from Steve Jobs?
It's not an option. You work for Steve Jobs.
I had a feeling that would have been the exact answer.
Dumb question, Chris.
That you would have given. No, not a dumb question. I was just, I guess, sort of anticipating that Guy would have said that.
Yeah, but listen, in a sense, Apple had its failures too, right? So nobody's using a Lisa today. Nobody's using an Apple III. Nobody's using a Newton. So it's not like Apple has had 100% success rate.
Yeah. Although
I would say success rate is a lot higher than most companies. So for me, Steve Jobs, you can interpret what he did in one of two ways, or maybe both even. So one way of looking at him is that he knew what people would come to want. Another way of looking at it is basically he did whatever the hell he wanted, and then he convinced people to want it too. Either of those interpretations work because, frankly, he did both. So, that is a good wrapper around what is failure. It's when you either cannot anticipate what people need, or you are not able to create what you want to create and then make everybody want it. So in a perfect world, do both, which is Steve. In a still okay world, you would do one of the two, and if you cannot do either, you.
So you famously touted that exact sort of mantra where you shouldn't build things that customers want if you want to be ahead of the curve. Can you explain why it's a failure to actually, listen to your customers in that way?
Well, this is a very, very careful thing we have to talk about. So I'm saying that you cannot ask your customers how to revolutionize your product or service.
Right.
Because your customer is going to tell you, I want a bigger, faster, cheaper Apple II. I want a bigger, faster, cheaper gasoline car. I want a bigger, faster, cheaper, watch. I want a bigger, faster, cheaper Walkman. And so in each of those cases, I don't think Sony's customers could have told Sony, build an iPod. And I don't think that Apple's customers would have told it to build a Macintosh. They would have said bigger, faster, cheaper Apple II. Now, once you ship your revolution, iPod, Macintosh, or whatever it is, then customers can tell you how to improve it. But I don't think they can define it initially.
Okay. Yeah, that's super interesting, and obviously the dichotomy between both of those is important.
Yeah, definitely.
So, would you say, this is kind of on another breath as it relates to Apple, would you say that you leaving Apple the few times that you did, was that a mistake? Was that a failure in its own right?
The few times that I did what with Apple?
You left Apple?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I left Apple twice, and I turned Steve down for another job. So, was that a mistake? Absolutely. I mean, probably a couple $100 million mistake. So, yeah.
That's a big number.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, if I had just sucked it up either of those three times, well, first of all, I would not be on your podcast.
I don't blame you.
Well, the funny backstory, anyways, for everyone listening and watching, wow, Fortune is really in the follow-up. We probably tried for like 2 years to get Guy on the podcast, and thank God that you are on. Yeah, we've just been like actively trying to get you on the podcast. So I could only imagine if you had those, couple $100 million, like we wouldn't even been able to get a hold of you in the first place. So I mean, for our sake, thank you, I guess.
If I had stayed at Apple and be worth a couple $100 million and all that, my people's people would be responding to you.
Yeah. They probably still wouldn't even reply to us, but
that's awesome. So, wondering if you could sort of double down on a few of those key quote unquote failures that Apple had, and from your own perspective, share how you think that actually influenced Apple's success in the long run, like the Newton, like the Lisa.
I know this is, listen, and I don't work at Apple anymore, so, there's no reason for me to just toe a party line. But what you have to hand to Apple, and I would say in particular Steve Jobs, is at least they did brave stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, they took shots. They didn't just make MS-DOS 1.1, MS-DOS 1.2, 3, 4, 5. So if you look at not just the platforms, but you look at the things they tried to do, like they put CD-ROMs in every computer. Yeah, they use FireWire. They use USB-C. I mean, I can't tell you I agree with everything they did, but, holy cow, they did big things. So as an aside, I will tell you that I think the person who's closest to being a current Steve Jobs is Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
And, I guarantee you, Elon Musk is not going to be 10 for 10 or whatever he is.
Right.
But at least he tries big stuff. And you can make the case that Steve Jobs truly changed the world with digital devices. But if Elon Musk is right, he'll be sending people to Mars. He'll be drilling tunnels under cities. He'll be having cheap solar panels. He has already forced the entire automobile business to go electric.
Yep.
So you could make the case that Elon Musk will have bigger societal impact than Steve Jobs.
What would you say is a common characteristic amongst Steve Jobs and an Elon Musk that you've seen?
Humongous ego, humongous self-confidence. Fake it till you make it. I mean, unfortunately, there are a lot of clueless people who have those qualities too.
Yeah, for sure.
The difference between Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and every other clown is that they can deliver.
Right.
Yep. Okay, awesome.
Execution. Yeah.
So I did want to chat briefly about you started up, or you were at least part of starting up Garage Ventures. Is that correct?
Yes, I was a founder.
And I'd love to hear a little bit about how that was going, founding Garage Ventures, and then doing that through, I believe it was the bubble, right? Where you were running Garage. Yeah.
So we started the company called Garage.com, and Garage.com was a little boutique venture capital investment bank. So the vision was that there are lots of entrepreneurs and there's lots of potential investors. There needs to be something in the middle to connect the two. Right. So it would be Garage. And it morphed itself from being an investment bank providing services to becoming a primary investor, like a venture capitalist.
Mm-hmm.
Say it was moderately successful, nothing like Sequoia or Kleiner Perkins or anything like that. But we were trying to basically democratize venture capital. And it was, a semi-success.
And so did that, I think I heard you chat about Garage Ventures and how, you were sort of running that through the financial crisis and how that definitely had an impact in.
Yeah, I mean, so we started it during the .com days, and, everything was going to go to infinity and beyond. But then the bubble collapsed, and it was just before we were going to go public. And so, life's a bitch. I mean.
And so how did you parlay that into positivity as you're so radiant with positivity all the time, what was your next move after that?
Yeah. How'd you bounce back?
Well, it never totally imploded in the sense of, you read about some of these .com startups or even startups today that they're high flyers one day, and then the next day you're reading that they're having a bankruptcy and liquidation, right. All that. So it kind of faded into the sunset. It didn't implode. And so I never had to explain, why I was such a loser. And then I just moved on. I mean, Garage still exists today. It's still doing stuff, but it never achieved worldwide domination. That's for sure. But it was a valiant try to change the venture capital business.
What do you think that the common pitfall in modern venture capital is then?
Listen, I used to be a venture capitalist, and I disliked the business. 99.9% of the time you said no, and the other 0.1% of a time that you say yes. Know that within the year you're gonna have to beat the crap out of the CEO.
Yep.
You always deal with other venture capitalists who are the biggest bunch of egomaniac. I'm not. Listen, I have great respect for Kleiner Perkins working to Sequoia and those kind of places, but I can't tell you that they're high on my list of organizations or industries that I admire. In a sense, the way it works is you raise $1 billion fund, you have a management fee of 1.5%. So you have 1.5% of $1 billion coming in, and that's for you to just show up, 5 days a week after you play golf. And if you totally screw up, you still get 1.5% of $1 billion. And then if you don't totally screw up and somebody in your partnership hits a home run, you make tens of millions of dollars. Meanwhile, everybody's sucking up to you because you're the money guy. I mean, I just described a really great life. All right, there's like no downside, to being a venture capitalist, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, walk us.
I don't,
Oh, go ahead.
I just, people ask me for advice all the time. Young people.
Yeah.
They want to be an investment banker or venture capitalist, and I think those are the two worst jobs for a young person to start in, because you're basically not learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're carrying some assholes' bags on private jets, and you're learning nothing about truly operating a company.
Right.
And you're not making the world a better place.
How do you...
You want to know how it feels?
Yeah. Tell us how you really feel, Guy.
Yeah. Let it out.
Is there any fixing that, or how do early stage companies operate without venture capital?
Well, I think that, venture capital should be looked at as the last resort, not the first.
Right.
I think venture capital is basically like crack. It feels great when you get it, but eventually it's going to kill you.
Yep.
I think that, well, first of all, the cost of starting a company are much lower now, right? Because you don't buy entire buildings to co-locate your website. Yeah. You use Amazon S3. You have to buy laptops, okay. You don't really have to have as much expensive real estate because you can have virtual teams. All the tools you need are probably open source. And your marketing, you use social media, which is very cheap, if not free. So the barriers to entry for a tech firm these days are much lower, which means you need less money, which means you need less venture capital at all. So I think the right attitude is, let's see how we can make this company work without venture capital. And now, I think it's very important for your audience to understand that there's a so-called venture capital deal. And so people have to understand that a venture capitalist wants to fund the next Apple, Google, Cisco, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Canva. They're not trying to make the world a better place. The venture capitalists, they are not trying to create jobs. They're not trying to help create a new kind of, retail outlet or restaurant or whatever. They want to put in $10 million and get $200 million back.
Yep.
That wipes out most of the kind of startups that happen. So that's not applicable to a restaurant, to a consultancy, to a service operation. I mean, and I think a lot of people, they're just pissing in the wind trying to raise venture capital because they're not a venture capital deal. I mean, you have to be thinking that within 5 years or so, you're going to be doing $200 or $300 million in revenue.
Yep.
And so that eliminates a lot of service firms and consultancies and restaurants and retail operations. So, it's foolish to spend a year or two trying to raise venture capital. Now, don't get me wrong, there will be a restaurant that raises venture capital and goes public and, becomes the next Starbucks, okay? But, besides Starbucks, who can you name? So, think Google, Apple, Cisco, Yahoo, Pinterest, Instagram, Canva. Not, my buddy and I figured out a great way to make recyclable coffee cups. We need $5 million. I mean, it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So you talk to a lot of founders, right, and lot of venture capitalists. What would you say, or what from your experience, is the most common failure in early stage companies?
Running out of money.
Running out of money.
I would say, I don't know if I can narrow it down to one,
Right.
but so some common things. Common thing is, total failure in terms of delivery schedule. That you think you are the first company in the history of man that's going to deliver software within 1 year.
Yeah.
It's probably because you have never finished a product in your life. So, when people tell me when they're going to finish, I add a year. When people tell me their first year of revenue, what it's going to be, I divide by 100. And so, add a year and divide by 100, you're going to be right more often than not.
Yeah.
So it's just like, this crazy optimism of delivery and how fast the dogs will adopt eating your food. Never happens that way.
Yep.
A second thing is, and kind of a follow-on to this is, because they're so optimistic and delusional, and they think their product is going to be on time and have this amazing sales, they ramp up their infrastructure because, they need multiple locations. They need 24/7 support. They need, reams and reams of paper and food and, people. And we have to have like the best everything, right? And then your software is a year late and no one's buying it. So you have all this overhead just eating into your capital that is sitting around, and you think, oh, we have so much invested in training them. We can't get rid of them now. I know we're going to meet the next deadline, and then you miss the next deadline. And so you run out of money and you're an idiot. So the advice I have is, you should eat what you kill.
Yep.
Not eat what you plan to kill.
Yep. Good advice. So
a second cautionary thing is, people hire similar people. That the firm is not diverse enough. So geeky people hire geeky people, and salespeople hire salespeople. But really, you need to hire people who are different from you. So if you're the geek, you need the salesperson. If you're the salesperson, you need the geek. If everybody's a geek, you have nobody to sell. If everybody's a salesperson, there's nobody who's building the product.
Yeah, I think I actually remember you talking about this probably on a couple of the talks that you've done, is that there are two types of people in the company, and they should always be complementary to each other. You have one person who builds the product and one person who sells or markets the product, and that's it. Yep. And I was like, shit, when I was watching it, I was like, holy shit, that's absolutely right. Like, literally, those are the two types of people in an organization.
So given your experience in not only talking to a lot of early stage companies, but obviously a lot of your career has been spent in later stage, successful organizations, what would you say the biggest failure is of those organizations, and how does that differ from the early stage companies?
Well, I think the biggest failure in existing companies is that, for a variety of reasons, including going public, and now they have to report great results every 90 days, that they get comfortable and they don't try to create or jump to the next curve. So, one very good story is that in 1970 or 1975, an engineer at Kodak invented digital cameras. Okay? So can you imagine that engineer going to his boss saying, hey, I invented a way where people don't have to buy film. What do you think? Yeah. Kodak says, yo, what a great idea. Let's put ourselves out of business.
Yeah.
And so who uses a Kodak digital camera today?
Yeah.
Well, for that matter, who uses film?
That's true.
Yeah.
So therein lies the problem, that once you become big and successful, you just try to continue on the same curve.
Sort of like a loss of appetite for risk, I guess. Worried about the fiscal damage, obviously, but yeah.
not to beat a dead horse, but where do you think that Apple differed and continues to differ when it comes to innovation? Is it just leadership, or is there something ingrained in the culture or the processes that changes that?
I think ingrained in Apple is an engineering, appreciation of engineering and engineering excellence. Having said that, we expect Apple to create not just new versions of the same product, but we expect it to create new categories, right?
Right.
So it created a category of personal computers, Apple I, Apple II, Macintosh, a new category of personal computer, GUI, iPod, iPhone, iPad, a new category of digital device. Maybe Apple Watch is that new category, but the expectations for Apple are so high. So, when's the last time you read about people getting in line at midnight so that they could get the first thing in the morning, the first one in their city? It's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
But, right now it seems like the Apple strategy is we'll put faster chips in what we already make. Yeah, hallelujah. I mean, but that's not a new category.
Yeah. Yeah, that is, it's almost, it's like the parallel to the venture capital hamster wheel that sort of companies get themselves on, where it's great, you raise that early stage money, or you create that category, but now you have to live up to raising that next round, or like you said, creating that new category.
Well, don't get me wrong now. There are very few companies who have created one category,
yeah,
much less several. So
yeah,
several categories. Don't get me wrong, and that's why Apple is $1 trillion company, and
yep,
and Kodak isn't.
Yeah.
So,
yep,
it's easy to say. It's very hard to do.
Yep,
definitely. Before we wrap up, I was kind of. I actually didn't know that you were involved with Motorola. I'd kind of love to hear your thoughts and maybe an anecdote or two on that. And I guess we don't even have any context of the timing, but I'm sure you've seen the ups and downs there.
Yeah. So Google bought Motorola, and I was the special advisor to the CEO of Motorola, and my interpretation was that Google was going to get into the phone business.
Right.
And so, once you buy a great brand, Motorola was a great brand, right? I mean, it stood for, it literally invented cell phones.
Yep.
But then, I don't know why, Google kind of gave up on Motorola and sold it to some Chinese company. And I think that Google gave up too early. I actually think that's also true of Google Plus, but that's a whole different, a whole different direction we could go. So, on the other hand, what do I know? I mean, Google's worth, I don't know about, it's not worth $1 trillion, but it's getting there. So what the hell do I know? But it's interesting that the guy who was in charge of R&D at Motorola is now at Google making all these great Pixel phones. Pixel phones are great phones.
Oh, they're awesome.
Almost got one.
Yeah.
Almost. Made the switch back.
But there's a little story here. So, what I don't understand is, why do people care whether their text bubble is blue or green? I do not understand. It's so fun. And number two, green is a bad thing, right, in this world. And it seems to me, just from a user interface standpoint, if I sent a message and it turned green, I'm on an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
And it turns green, that's bad, right?
Yeah.
And to me, though, green means go, green means good, green means money, green means whatever, right? So why is green the bad color? Green should be the good.
I agree.
Red or blue should be the bad color. I don't understand that at all.
I think that's the most insightful thing we will talk about on this season of the podcast.
Love it.
Well,
so I I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna do a podcast. I've decided I will start a podcast. Podcast is going to be my new exercise instead of writing books. I've written 15 books. I'm tired of writing books.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, I want to do a podcast. So I have two ideas for the name of the podcast. One idea is obvious, which is Wise Guy, which is after my latest book,
Yep.
right? But I am more emotionally attached and more enthusiastic about a second name. So I want you to tell me what you think of me calling my podcast this name, okay?
Okay.
The name is Duh. D-U-H period.
I love it.
I like
and
it.
You heard it first on the Art of the Fail.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah? You like it?
I
like it.
I love it. I love it.
I
Yeah.
tell some people have your reaction. I tell it to other people and they say, well, that's elitist, it's condescending, it's insulting and all that. And I say, well, there's so much stupidity in this world and so much lying and stuff that maybe people will gravitate towards something that says, well, duh. Well, for example, vaccines don't cause autism. Duh.
That's your opening. That's your opening episode.
Yeah.
No, I love it, and I think that why one of the reasons why people resonate so much with you is because of that honesty.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that transparency. So I think it's a great concept, and again, it first time heard here on the Art of the Fail.
Right here.
Literally, you're the first public group I've asked this question. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
So I actually had a question there in regards to writing that not really on the topic of failure, but I was curious why you were drawn to the medium of writing books. You've written so many books, and I'm wondering, what is it, therapeutic or how did that come to be?
And how the hell do you keep writing? 15's a lot.
Answer to your first question, why writing and all that, or why books, is very honest and very simple. Big advances.
Okay.
How's that?
I love it. Yeah, that's a Guy answer.
Yeah, well, listen, I have gotten big advances, but it's just, to me, writing a book is like putting out a piece of your soul, okay? And the reason why you should write a book is because, duh, you have something to say.
Episode number 2.
Unfortunately, many people, particularly business writers,
Yeah.
they write a book for very impure reasons, such as, I want to write a book to position myself as a thought leader. I want to write a book to increase my speaking. I want to write a book to increase my consultancy. I want to write a book for credibility. All total bullshit. Because, you know what? People don't read books or buy books in order to further your career. They're buying and reading books to further their career, their happiness, their life, or whatever. So if you don't have anything to say and all you want to do is, write The Schmo Way by Joe Schmo, published by Schmo Press, just freaking stay at home. I mean, it's... Don't kill trees, man.
Yeah.
Again, tell us how you really feel, Guy.
Let it out, Guy. Let it out.
Second question.
How do you keep writing? Like when you were writing, I can only imagine like your first book, which might have been in the 80s or 90s, at least a while ago now. Did you have a thought that was like, I'm gonna write 3 books, 4 books? Like I'm sure you weren't like, I'm gonna write 15 books.
No, I said after I wrote The Macintosh Way in 1987, I said, this is it. It's my last book.
Yeah.
I've said that 14 times.
Yeah.
So,
how did you just keep going? I guess an idea goes off in your head and
ideas pop into my head. I said, okay, so now I'll write about evangelism. Then I'll write about startups because I was at garage.com.
Right.
And then I'll write about Wise Guy is a collection of stories of my life.
Right.
It's not an autobiography. It's more like these are all the mistakes I made. Let me tell you how and why and what happened. And this is the lesson. This is the wisdom of everyone.
Yeah.
So now the irony may be that I'm going to do this podcast called Duh, period. And it's going to lead to a book called Duh.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah. Well, duh.
Which is funny.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make you T-shirts that say, just duh it.
Love it.
Yes, I love it.
Love it. We'll take 2, please.
Awesome, guys. So before Christian wraps us up here, I just wanted to give the floor to you. If you have any last moment, any last thought on failure or anything else for that matter, I'd love to give you the opportunity.
So first of all, when you hear people say that, failure is okay, fail fast, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Total bullshit.
Yeah.
Failure is not okay. You're screwing around with people's lives and money. You have to do everything you can to avoid failure. So don't have this cavalier attitude like, they read it in Fast Company or Wired or CNET that, oh yeah, no problem, I'll raise, $5 million and, if it fails, it fails, because failure is okay. Failure is not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that many people forget that the purpose of a company is to create customers, not to create PowerPoint, Excel, and Word documents. So, create customers, not pitches. And the third thing is the most important thing you can do is finish your prototype. That is priority number 1, 2, and 3.
I love it.
Love it.
Guy,
There you
thank
go.
you so much for the raw and unique perspective today. Before we go, Christian is going to sign us off the way we always sign things off.
Yeah. So, Guy, we always like to leave off on one question. Promise you just one more. That's it. Before you can leave these 2 Joe Schmoes here. We always like to ask our guests, if you could pick anyone, someone you know, someone you don't know, someone maybe that even inspires you, who you would like to see come on the show, have a conversation with us about failure and their experiences, who would that one person be, or even 2 people?
It has to be about failure, obviously, right?
In and around the topic of failure.
Yeah. Hillary Clinton.
That would be good. That would be good.
Okay, I don't know where you guys stand politically, but it just amazes me that we had the most qualified person running against the least qualified person, and the most qualified person lost. I don't understand that at all.
Yeah.
What? That's just a follow-up question.
That's a big one there, especially us being in Canada. So we've got a lot of questions. So
I was listening to I think a podcast that you were on, and you said that after the election you got very political. Why was that?
I got very political because
I noticed that in your LinkedIn post too, actually.
my LinkedIn is all politics.
Yes,
now. So
I noticed the change in that.
Yeah, I was in Germany, and I had dinner with these 2 friends, and they said, Guy, we ask our grandparents, and we wonder to this day, how did you let Hitler come to power? And then they said to me, you are in 1930. It is 1934 for America. So you have a choice, basically. Do you want your grandchildren to wonder, did Grandpa resist fascism in America? And that's the day I said, my grandchildren are not going to wonder if I resisted. That's when I got political.
There you go. That's a good answer.
That's a great answer.
Awesome, Guy. Well, thank you again so much for coming.
Appreciate it.
What's that?
Okay, take care. Thank you. I enjoyed this very much.
Thank you,
so
guys.
much, Guy. Have a great day.
Take care. Thank you, Chris, and everyone else for watching and listening to today's episode. Thank you very much.
But before you go, please subscribe. Please subscribe. I'm begging you. Subscribe. Also like the video. helps the YouTube algorithm, if you will. And smash that notifications button, because otherwise subscriptions don't even fucking do anything.
Nope.
Subscribe, like, notification bell. And if you're really feeling saucy, comment. Let us know what you think.